Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening up a stack of research that deals with a feeling I think every single person listening right now is going to recognize. That specific kind of exhaustion where you've just finished learning a new software or you've gotten used to a new manager and you take a deep breath ready to finally just do your job.
And then the email lands.
The email lands. Strategic pivot, new synergies, and you're right back to square one.
Yeah.
Exactly. We are diving into this concept of chronic change fatigue. But the research we have today suggests that what we're feeling, it isn't just burnout. It argues that the way we've been taught to handle change, the standard corporate playbook, is actually making us sick.
It is. And to set the stage, there's a quote in the source material from a director at a Fortune 500 company that it sums it all up.
What'd they say?
They said, "We don't have change initiatives anymore. We have a permanent state of reorganization interrupted by brief moments of stability."
Wow. That sounds exhausting just hearing it. Brief moments of stability. That sounds like a war zone, not an office job.
It's a sobering reality. But the mission for this deep dive isn't to just complain. We're looking at a fundamental shift in how we operate.
Okay.
The sources are arguing that we need to move from change management, where change is a project with a start and end,
Right.
to adaptive capacity, which is like a permanent state of being.
So moving from surviving the storm to learning to live in the rain.
I like that analogy. And the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just about wellness. The data shows that organizations that get this right, the ones who build this adaptive capacity, they see 3.5 times higher revenue growth.
3.5 times?
And 2.1 times greater profitability.
Okay, so there's a massive financial incentive. But I want to start with the human cost, because we've all been busy before. Why does this feel so much heavier? I'm looking at the stats here. In 2022, the average employee faced 10 planned enterprise changes. But by 2025, that number hit 14. And the overlap rate, meaning changes happening at the same time, is over 60%. Why does that overlap matter so much?
That overlap is the killer. It's all about cognitive load. When you have one big change, you can focus. You can marshal your resources. But when you have 14 and they're overlapping, your brain literally cannot process the hierarchy. Everything feels like a crisis.
And that triggers the biology, right? The sources get deep into the neuroscience of this, which I found fascinating.
They do. They call it chronic adaptation stress. To put it simply, the human brain, it craves certainty. It's an evolutionary thing. When we face uncertainty, our brain just activates its threat detection system.
It's looking for the tiger in the bushes.
Exactly. So even if the tiger is just a new expense reporting system or a desk move,
the brain reacts the same way.
At a chemical level, yes. And that reaction is metabolically expensive. It consumes massive amounts of glucose and oxygen. Now, normally those resources are for your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain for creativity, complex problem solving, emotional regulation.
So let me get this straight. If I'm constantly adapting to new changes, always checking for tigers, I am literally draining the fuel my brain needs to actually be good at my job.
Precisely. You aren't just tired, you are chemically depleted. And this leads to decision fatigue, a massive drop in creativity, and eventually total burnout. You just can't think strategically when your brain is in survival mode.
And organizations often respond to this in the worst possible way, don't they?
They launch what the researchers call change theater.
I highlighted this term. It made me laugh, but it's actually tragic. Change theater.
It's significantly worse than a bad play because you can't walk out at intermission.
Right.
Change theater is when leadership senses that people are disengaged, so they double down on the appearance of change. Town halls with confetti, flashy slide decks, new logos, launch parties.
Branded cupcakes?
Exactly. They spend a lot of resources to make it look in progress.
But nothing actually changes deep down.
Right. It's performative. And this creates a cynical cycle. The employees see the flash, but they know there's no substance, so they develop change immunity, which is...
What? Just ignoring.
Practically, it's a learned survival mechanism. Employees learn that most initiatives vanish in 6 months, when the executive sponsor leaves or gets bored. So when a new one is announced, they don't resist openly. They just wait.
Yeah.
They nod, they smile, and they do nothing, knowing if they wait long enough, it'll die on its own.
The "this too shall pass" strategy, I think everyone listening has probably done that.
And the people who suffer the most in this dynamic are the middle managers.
The data on this was shocking. I assumed executives would be the most stressed, or maybe the entry-level folks.
No, it's the middle.
Yeah.
Middle managers are bearing 2.7 times the cognitive load of executives.
Why?
Because they're the change translators. They have to take the strategy from above, which might be vague or shifting, and make it make sense for their team, all while keeping the lights on. They're the shock absorbers.
So we've got a depleted workforce, cynical employees, and middle managers on the verge of collapse. It sounds pretty bleak.
It does. But this is where the research pivots to the solution. And it starts with a mindset shift that, frankly, sounds a bit weird at first.
You're talking about negative capability.
I am.
I have to admit, when I first saw that, I thought, great, we need to be more negative. I'm already there. But that's not it at all.
No, it's not pessimism. The term's borrowed from the poet John Keats. He described it as the ability to exist in uncertainty, mystery, and doubt without irritable reaching after fact and reason.
Irritable reaching. That is such a perfect description of modern corporate life. Everyone wants the answer immediately. We need a slide deck, a roadmap. We need certainty by 5 p.m.
Right. And what Keats and these researchers are saying is that true adaptability requires the strength to just sit in the unknown. In a business context, it means leaders who don't force premature certainty, who don't pretend to know the answer when they really don't.
This feels like the exact opposite of the hero CEO archetype.
Yeah.
You know, the leader who charges in and says, follow me, I have the master plan.
That archetype is dying. In a complex world, the hero CEO is actually dangerous because they're probably wrong. The world's moving too fast. The data here is incredible. Teams led by high negative capability leaders had 47% lower stress responses.
47%.
And 52% better adaptation outcomes.
So by admitting they don't know, they actually lower the stress for everyone.
Yes, because it changes the framing. Instead of a problem that needs a perfect solution now, the challenge becomes a hypothesis to test. We have a perfect case study for this. Microsoft under Satya Nadella.
This is the shift from know-it-all to learn-it-all.
Exactly. When Nadella took over, Microsoft was rigid, a culture of, we have the answers. He shifted it to a culture of curiosity.
But that wasn't just a slogan, was it? We just talked about change theater. How is this different?
It was different because it changed how they approached failure. If you're a know-it-all, failure is a defect. It means you were wrong. If you're a learn-it-all, failure is just data. It's part of the process.
And the results, I mean, they speak for themselves. Market cap went from, what, $300 billion in 2014 to over $3 trillion in 2024.
It's the power of being comfortable with not knowing everything. It creates space for innovation.
Okay, so that's the mindset. Negative capability, be okay with the mystery. But, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, you can't run a company on mystery alone. If I don't know my job or when a meeting is, that's not poetic uncertainty, that's just chaos.
You are absolutely right. You cannot have uncertainty everywhere. And this brings us to the central paradox in the research. Predictability in process enables adaptability in content.
Break that down for us.
If the what of your work is constantly changing new products, new strategies, then the how and when needs to be rock solid. You need an anchor.
The source calls this solving calendar chaos.
Which I think every listener just nodded their head at. When your calendar is a minefield of random meetings popping up at all hours, your brain can never settle. You're constantly in that threat detection mode.
So the fix is establishing a strict organizational rhythm.
A heartbeat for the company. The text suggests a specific cadence. It starts daily.
Daily 15-minute stand-ups. Now, hold on. I can hear people rolling their eyes. We're burnt out, and your solution is more meetings. Every day.
I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but stick with me. The data says daily stand-ups reduce role ambiguity by 28%.
28%.
The reason people hate meetings is because they're long, unstructured, and pointless. A 15-minute stand-up isn't a meeting, it's a synchronization.
So it's just, what are you doing? What's blocking you? Go.
Exactly. Just knowing what the priority is today stabilizes the brain. It removes the guesswork.
Yeah. Okay, so micro-clarity. What about the longer term?
Then you have the weekly cycle, weekly learning cycles or retrospectives. This lowers error rates by 43%. And here's the key. This is not a status update. It's not, I did X, Y, and Z.
What is it then?
It's a what did we learn session. It's reflective. It's asking what went wrong this week and how do we fix it?
There's a great example of this from Unilever in the notes.
Yes, with their sustainable living plan, a massive complex change. But they navigated by using weekly check-ins focused purely on learning. That rhythm allowed them to overhaul their entire supply chain, Yet employee engagement stayed 12 points above the industry average.
Because people knew what to expect. They knew when they would talk about problems, so they didn't have to panic.
Exactly. It contains the anxiety. You contain the chaos within a structure.
Now, speaking of anxiety, let's talk about skills. Because usually, when a company wants to upskill, they send you to a 2-day workshop in a windowless room. You eat a stale bagel and then go back to your desk where 3 days of work is piled up.
Which nobody has time for. And honestly, it doesn't work. The retention rate from those workshops is abysmal because it's disconnected from reality. The source argues for everyday development.
Learning in the flow of work.
Right. And the example they use is the Pixar brain trust.
I've heard of this, but I never really understood how it worked.
It's legendary. And it's the antithesis of a workshop. The brain trust is a group of directors and storytellers. When a director is working on a movie and it's not working, and at Pixar, they admit all their movies suck at first. They call a brain trust session.
And they just screen the messy version.
They screen the messy, broken version, and then the peers tear it apart.
That sounds painful. I thought we were trying to reduce stress.
It is painful, but it's constructive pain. The goal isn't to fix the movie for the director. It's to give honest feedback so the director can fix it. This builds tolerance for criticism and real-time sense-making skills. The work is the learning.
But that only works if people aren't terrified of looking stupid. If I show you my messy work and you use it against me in my performance review, I'm never showing you messy work again.
Which brings us to the holy grail, psychological safety. But the source makes a really important distinction here that I think most people miss. We often think psychological safety just means being nice.
Supportive safety.
Right. Everyone's polite, nobody disagrees. That's nice, but it doesn't drive adaptation. It leads to groupthink. What you need is challenging safety.
So feeling safe enough to say, hey, this idea is bad, or I made a huge mistake, without getting fired.
Correct. Safe to take risks, to engage in conflict. Roche Diagnostics is the case study here. They did something very smart. They separated their learning reviews from their performance evaluations.
That is a crucial detail, because if I think admitting a mistake is going to hurt my bonus, I'm burying it.
Exactly. By separating them, making it clear that the learning review was a safe zone for mistakes, they saw a 40% acceleration in product development cycles. People stopped hiding problems.
Okay, so we have the mindset, we have the rhythm, we have the safety to learn. But sometimes, and I think this is where a lot of organizations fail, there's just too much stuff.
The problem of volume.
You can be the most adaptive person in the world, but if you have 50 top priorities, you're going to drown.
This is where strategic change governance comes in. It sounds dry, but it's actually about the power of saying no.
The strategic no.
It's about assessing the cumulative change load. Leaders love to add things. It feels like progress. Removing things feels like failure. But the stats show organizations that reject or delay 23% of proposed initiatives actually achieve 34% higher success rates on the ones they keep.
Less is literally more.
It is. Novo Nordisk is the example. They set up a transformation office that forced sequencing. They didn't just say do it all. They said do this, then do that.
Which sounds simple, but politically that's really hard. You have to tell a VP your prep project has to wait.
It requires immense discipline. But at Novo Nordisk, they reduced active initiatives by 35%, and their strategic goal achievement went up by 41%. They stopped clogging the arteries.
So let's pivot one last time. We've covered the organization, but I want to bring this down to the individual listener. If stability is gone, what happens to job security? The old deal was, I work hard, I have a job for life.
That deal is dead, and pretending it's alive is part of the problem. The source discusses a shift in the psychological contract.
So what's the new deal?
From job security to employability.
Explain that distinction.
Job security promises you will have this job forever. Companies can't promise that, but they can promise employability, that they will invest in you, build your skills, your adaptability, so that you'll be valuable anywhere.
That sounds terrifying, honestly. It's like saying, we can't promise we'll stay married, but I promise to help you look good for your next partner.
It's harsh, but it's honest, and honesty builds trust. Look at Patagonia. Their contract isn't based on we will never fire you. It's based on shared values and their result, 4% voluntary turnover.
And the industry average is what, like 13%?
13%, yeah.
Wow. So people stay because they're part of a mission.
Exactly. And then you have Amazon with their day one philosophy. They embed adaptation into the role design itself. 2 pizza teams, systematic experimentation. Your job is to adapt. If you aren't changing, you aren't doing the job.
So we've gone on quite a journey here. We started with the biological reality of change fatigue. our brains running out of fuel. We move to the mindset of negative capability, being strong enough to sit with the unknown. We talked about creating rhythm to handle the chaos, building challenging safety, and the discipline of saying no.
It's a comprehensive framework. It moves us from being victims of change to being masters of adaptation.
But before we wrap up, there's one final concept from the source that I think provides a really nice anchor for all of this, because you can't just change everything, right? If everything changes, you have no identity.
No, and that's the final insight. Islands of stability.
What does that mean in practice?
Research shows stability and change aren't opposites. They are complementary. You actually need stability to endure change. Think of a rock climber. You can reach for a new hold, that's the change, but only if your other hand has a firm grip on something solid. That's the stability.
Who does this well?
The Mayo Clinic is the perfect example. They are on the bleeding edge of medicine. New tech, new treatments, constantly changing. But their core value, the needs of the patient come first, and their collaborative model of care. Those are immovable rocks. They have never changed. That is their island of stability.
So when everything else is swirling, the staff can stand on that.
Precisely. It reduces that cognitive load we talked about at the beginning. You don't have to question everything. You know who you are and you know why you are here.
That's powerful. It's not about changing everything. It's about knowing what doesn't change so that you can change everything else.
Ideally, yes.
So here's our question for you, the listener. As you navigate your own permanent state of reorganization, what is your island of stability? What is the one thing, your values, your routine, your purpose, that won't change no matter what the next email says?
Find that island and you can weather any storm.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.